Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the Podcast Accelerator, the thrice-weekly show that brings you podcast education, industry insights, and straight-talking reactions to podcasting news. I'm your host, Mark Asquith, that British podcast guy and CEO and co-founder here at Rebel Base Media, the podcast tech company that creates the Podcast Success Academy, podcast websites, productivity, Rebel Base Studios, and Captivate.fm, the world's only growth-oriented podcast host, where you can get your first month of podcast hosting for just $1 and transfer an existing podcasting completely for free. So go ahead and check it out now at Captivate.fm. Now, today on the show, we're going to talk in a little bit of a contrarian manner. Although not really contrarian, it's actually with exceptional reasoning. But we're going to talk about when not to batch record your podcast. It's something that interests me. I'm a huge fan of batching content and processes in general, but there are certain times when I believe that it is not the right choice. But look, before I do that, just a quick heads up that AWeber are still giving you 90 days to try their email marketing platform. So if you're looking for a way to directly engage with your listeners and to build a relationship with each and every one of them, email marketing is still the very best way to do that. And if you aren't doing it, I promise you are leaving opportunities on the table. So please go and check AWeber out for 90 days for free at markasquith.com/AWeber. Now, batching anything is a great way to manage a heavy amount of content in one go, and a great way to manage a heavy amount of work and processes and anything that you want to do. Generally, getting it done and out of the way in one process is really, really useful. But although that can be superb for your podcast, there are times when batching content actually holds you back. So let's take a look at kind of how to stay flexible. Well, first of all, I just want to say that I really am a huge fan of batching content. Very often, I will batch this very show. And, I'll batch it in certain degrees. Sometimes I record a month out. Sometimes I record 3 months worth of content. If I'm doing some traveling or whatever, I'll record 3 months worth of content. Or I'll record a week. So, for example, today, Monday the 1st of July, I'm actually recording this at 3:38 p.m. on Monday the 1st of July, and I will publish this immediately after I have recorded it. But what I'll also then go on to do is to record the episode for Wednesday and for Friday, and then for next week, Monday through Friday as well. And that's really, really useful because I've got a little bit of travel coming up over the weekend, and I know what I want to talk about. So batching generally is great, and I did about 6 weeks worth of travel about a year or so ago, and I recorded all the content literally the month before I went, and it was perfect. It was great. The content was good. It was well planned. However, there are certain times when batching your content actually holds you back, and in particular, what I notice with my podcast download numbers is that they tend to go up when I commentate on things that have just happened, and rightly so, of course. They're trending. They're current. And whilst I know that it's difficult to be always on top of current affairs, and maybe your show format doesn't allow for that, maybe you're an interview show or you're a scripted show or you're a drama show, I get that, and batching it is still the best way to do that there. However, I do believe that if you give yourself a little flexibility to not have to batch, I do think that you're going to get a show that really communicates with people. Okay, that really kind of feels as if it is aware of what's going on around it. So depending on the type of show, I would urge you to consider a format that gives you a little flexibility. And as an example of that, that's exactly what I do here on the Podcast Accelerator. Now, when I first started my short-form podcasting, I used to actually do 7 days a week, and that was all right, but it meant that I had to batch it. Then I did 5 days a week, and the audience, when I asked them, you, the wonderful listener, told me that you'd like a little bit less content, which is great for me because it means I can put amazing content out that you're actually going to lap up and that you're going to really enjoy. That's very, very useful. You're not going to leave anything by the wayside. So it works out all around. But, what I always do with this show is I will give myself the flexibility. So even this week, if I batch everything for the next month, I give myself flexibility by saying, do you know what? I can do bonus shows. And I even explain this. If you go to markasquith.com and click on the podcast tab at the top, you'll see all of my shows there. Or if you go to markasquith.com/listen, what you'll see there is a listen online list of all of the Podcast Accelerator episodes. What I do is inside that description, I say, look, this is a thrice weekly show, usually between 7 and 15 minutes, with the occasional industry expert and the occasional bonus show. So I set the expectation. So that means I can batch record, but also insert bonus shows. Now, this is entirely possible due to Apple's new RSS tags. I mean, they're not new now. They're really not new. They're about a year and a half old now, and that gives you the opportunity. So if you use a host like Captivate.fm, you can choose to set an episode as a bonus episode, all right? And that's really, really useful. So what I'm saying to you here is that a lot of people, they'll start podcasting and just think to themselves, right, I'm going to batch record. And I agree that that works in many cases. However, I do believe that in so many more cases, you can become a little stagnant. You can maybe not record quite to the quality that you want to record to because you're batching them and you become tired during the latter stages of that. But also, I think it's important to be able to respond or give opinions on things that are happening in your industry. Ultimately, a podcast only has two real jobs for the listener. Number one, to entertain, or number two, to educate and add value. In both those circumstances, your job as the host is to be the go-to person. To be the go-to person in that field. And adding timely and opinion-based content to your mix without the need for batching, I believe, is a very, very, very interesting and increasingly important strategy because the industry is getting busy. All right, so if you can respond and be one of the first responders, that's amazing. My show that I did that responded to Apple getting rid of iTunes when they announced Apple Podcasts at WWDC a few weeks ago is the highest downloaded episode of this year because I responded. I actually think I was probably the first podcast to have released anything about Dub following that finishing because I literally watched it and then recorded. And that gave me a nice boost, not only in downloads for that show, but an increase in listeners. I've seen that through the statistics, all right? So just think that through. When not to batch record your podcast, when you want to be flexible and add timely, potentially opinion-based industry content to position you as the go-to resource. And thank you so much for joining me here on the Podcast Accelerator. Remember to tell all your podcasting friends that the show is available to listen to for free in any app that supports podcasts. And if you're wondering what the best next step to take for your own podcast is, whether you're a new or veteran podcaster, go ahead and take our short 5-minute survey where I'm going to help you to diagnose and solve the main issue holding your show and your podcast growth back. Plus, I'm going to give you access to our free, vibrant Podcast Rebellion community, some weekly free group coaching from me and the team here at Rebel Base Media, plus some actionable insider-only emails and even a free invitation to the Podcast Success Academy. So go ahead and invest 5 minutes now to grow your podcast by heading to rebelbasemedia.io/grow. And until next time, never forget, the more you expect from yourself, the more you will excel.